Hello everyone, welcome to Get Your Game On, the channel dedicated to immersive gaming. I got to tell you, I'm really excited today to be starting the series on the DOF Reality H6. It's one of the reasons I started this channel. We spent the better part of April customizing this thing, and I'm going to share it all with you now. Now this is going to be a series in multiple parts. Today we're going to do an overview, but we're going to do more down the road on how we built it, some of the customizations that we did, and maybe some tips and tricks for those of you that may be interested in something like this. So, motion simulator, what is it? Well, a motion simulator is basically a machine that takes either telemetry from a game or a sim and converts it into actual physical movement to emulate what it shows on the screen. In this case, it transfers it to a seat, and that moves the player around. You want to talk about immersion, this is it. So, motion simulators usually come in two different types. There's the seat mover, which typically just moves the seat and consequently the player, and all the controls and steering wheels stay static on the ground. And then there's the full frame or full cockpit motion like this, and everything moves all at once. So your controls, your joysticks, everything moves as you move. Now both have pluses and minuses. Seat movers typically are a little cheaper. They usually can respond a little quicker because they're not moving all that weight, so you get a little more nuanced motion out of it. And typically you don't have to worry about the weight of anything on this thing because everything's on the ground. Now a full frame simulator like this or a full cockpit, you have to worry about how much you load on it because the motors down there are moving the entire cockpit around. You also have to think about balance because if you get the thing out of balance you can easily overheat one of the motors. So they're typically a little more expensive as well. Now I've done both. The seat movers are pretty neat, work really well for racing. But in my opinion, for flight sims, you have to go with a full frame configuration because to have all your joysticks and everything static when you're flying just doesn't feel right. So let's do a quick tour of the DOF Reality H6 motion simulator. We obviously start with the seat and we move over to the throttle, which is part of the HOTAS system. From there we have the numeric keypad. This is a supplemental keypad which I use for some of my extra keys that I like to use. And then here you have the Kinesis split keyboard. It's mounted at an angle and I was a little worried that that wouldn't be very comfortable, but I actually am able to type on it pretty well. And then obviously that all flanks the G27 Logitech steering wheel. Above that we have the Sim Racing Studios fans, and we're going to go into a little more detail of what these do in another video down the road. Come over here to our Warthog flight stick, top notch, love that thing. And here you'll find our emergency stop button, and right below that is a touchpad, much like you'd find in a laptop, and I find that works very well for the motion simulator. And then down at the bottom here you have our combo rudder pedals, and also they will work as throttle and brake pedals as well. So let's talk a little bit about all the parts that actually make the motion simulator work. If you look back here you can see the control boxes which control everything. Next to that is the amplifier for the butt kicker, and as you can see the butt kicker is actually located under the seat right there, which adds a lot of tactile feel, especially when it comes to race engines or jet engines. And then we have the motors, which are what make all the magic happen. And we'll talk about these components in more detail in a later video, but for now that's a quick overview of the H6 and its components. Now all simulators deal with degrees of freedom. Some have fewer degrees of freedom than others. The H6, it's 6 degrees of freedom, which is the most you can have. So let's give you a little example of what these degrees of freedom have. Now, every motion simulator out there will have this first degree of freedom, which is pitch. And pitch is very much like a rocking chair. It's forward, and it's back, and forward, and back. And that's basically pitch. So that's the first degree of freedom. The second degree of freedom is roll. So this is similar to what you might encounter in a boat. It's kind of a left and right motion. So that's the second degree of freedom, and that's known as roll. The third degree of freedom is yaw, and this is a twisting motion. So you kind of twist to the side, and that's what you would encounter, for example, if you were in an airplane and working the rudders, you'd have that yaw feeling, and that's what you get. Now there's a variant of yaw that they use in racing games, and it's called traction loss. And traction loss is the same motion, But you'll notice on traction lost, the front doesn't move. The front stays steady, and it just slides the back end around instead of twisting the whole thing. Now the next one is sway. Sway is simply motion to the side. So you go to the side there and back to the other and back and sway. So that moves you, and that is the 4th degree of freedom. And next we're going to talk about surge. Now surge is just simple forward and back. And you can see it moves pretty good. So in surge, you would encounter that, say, if you're on an aircraft carrier and you did the launch or you caught wires on the landing. Surge really comes into effect there. And then the final one is heave. So heave is up and down. That's all it is a simple up and down. And this is really neat for flight simulators because in a flight simulator, you get that real good feeling when you land and hit the runway, you basically feel it. And so that's where heave is the 6th degree of freedom. So now that you guys understand a little bit more about the H6, let's put all this together and show this thing in action. Here we are in Project Cars 2, and we're going to take our race car down the coast of California. I left in some of my mistakes, so you're going to see this car get loose, you're going to see it bounce off guardrails, you're going to see it get in some dirt, and you're going to see the back end slide out. There might be a few jumps in here as well. So I'm going to let you sit back and enjoy this, and we'll be back after the race is over. So that's it for our first episode in our DOF Reality H6 Motion Simulator series. I hope you enjoyed it. We plan to do a lot more on this series, including how we built it, a lot of the customizations we did, and some tips and tricks. And obviously we're going to show you actually using it. So hit the like and subscribe if you want to see more of this. And until next time, remember, get your game on.